Always good on a Monday to hear that theme song and then look across the computer screen and see my good friend Rich Drees. My name is JW Colwell. Welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday. It's a good evening. It was a good weekend for you. I was on a cruise this weekend, so I had no internet.
Very nice.
Things didn't work out great at all. And and the movies, you usually on a cruise you can get movies at least, right? They run movies in a loop where you can pick up one or two movies maybe you haven't seen. Like last year, we went on a cruise and I got Moonfall. I saw it's a terrible movie, but I fell in love with it because I saw it like 5 times on the cruise. And it's just like
Stockholm syndrome, man.
Yeah. I was trapped, and also, but there are some movies that are so bad that they just go absolutely batshit insane. And that movie is one of them. That movie is just like, it starts off like a disaster movie, and then it's not a disaster movie. It's like, alien structure movie, and it's just fucking bonkers. But anyway, I got done with the cruise this weekend. You were gone away too. You got shirt, you got merch. You got you got to go to New York Comic Con. I'm eternally jealous. Let's talk about that for a moment. How was your New York Comic Con experience?
It was ups and downs, as it is every year, and this is my 18th year covering the show. Oh boy, 18 years! Holy crap!
You're fucking old, as am I.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
you're welcome.
But always the most important thing is meeting up with friends, including my friends Joel and Andy from Tripwire magazine over in England. And we hung out a good deal, had some meals, had some drinks, which was a lot of fun. Let's see. Big news. Not a whole lot of great big news. I think the biggest news was out of the Archer panel. Ironically enough, because the Archer panel, well, a lot of the panels were a little lacking.
Because of the SAG.
Yeah.
The SAG
Screen Actors Guild is still on strike. Yeah. So, like, for example, the Star Trek Universe panel, every other year, they pack, it's like 2 hours. They have like almost the cast from every single show parade up on stage and then back off, in 20-minute cycles. This year, they showed us the episode of Lower Decks that drops this Thursday, which is fun. It was a fun episode. They had the executive producer and creator of Lower Decks, Mike McCann, there doing 20 minutes of Q&A. And they had some quick, updates from Alex Kurtzman on Section 31. That's still happening. Michelle Yeoh definitely wants to make it. Starfleet Academy, they just convened the writers' room for. Lower Decks definitely has a season 5 coming. Discovery is entirely finished. It's just sitting there waiting to be shown next year.
Was there anything in the panel about Prodigy going to Netflix? Because that's...
Oh, yeah. They did announce that. They didn't say
That's a
anything about
weird
any.
story.
They didn't say anything about any further seasons. But I will say this: I think we're going to be seeing more of that. I think there's a shift starting among streamers, among studios that, consolidating everything under their own umbrella to draw people in is not necessarily working as well as they thought they would. So you're going to see more shows that you may have expected to see on the Paramount Plus app or the Warner Brothers app being farmed out to Hulu or Amazon or Netflix.
Well,
that I see as something that's going to be happening more and more.
I think that's an interesting case. I saw an interesting theory for Disney, right? Disney does Ahsoka, whether you were lukewarm on it or hot on it or whatever, in the middle seems to be everybody's, we're in the middle on it. Like if you liked Rebels and you liked Clone Wars episodes, then you were definitely in the warm on it, right?
Yeah, you were more predisposed to liking it.
Right, because you wanted to see those characters. But when you go from Ahsoka to Loki, that isn't necessarily the prime thing that fans are wanting. What they're finding and what I'm starting to discover is Marvel fans may not be Star Wars fans and Star Wars fans may not be Marvel fans. So the idea of keeping the stream, what Disney's been doing is they've been running these event shows, then starting a new event show right on top of it, right? And I think that's another place where we're going to see some changes, because I don't think it's sustainable. Also, I think it was designed as a way to keep people subscribing, and I don't know that it's working, because I think we're dealing with different fan bases, and I think Disney made the mistake of thinking that every fan base is the same, when in reality, probably what wants to happen, what most Star Wars fan wants to happen, I want to see more Star Wars. I want to see Mandalorian. I want to see whatever. I don't necessarily want to see Loki, and the people who are watching Loki don't necessarily want to watch Ahsoka. So we're running into a problem. Some comments to start. Hold on.
Okay, let's open up here.
Ken McKernan. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken.
I hope you're
feeling better. Ken, I found out today I think he's had heart procedures in the past, and he was having heart spasms, which I asked, is that Canadian for heart attacks today? Because I didn't know. And he's like, no,
it's a much more politer term.
Yeah, well, it's just a much nicer. We're having heart spasms today. I feel it's nicer, Canadian. Heart attack, like that's American. I'm having a heart attack. It's terrible. It's attacking me. Heart spasm. It's
a threat of violence involved.
Yes.
Obviously American.
Joe Rich, good evening, gentlemen. Sounds like you both had awesome weekends. Yes, I had awesome but stressful weekend with a 5 and a 7-year-old on a boat, and my wife and my aunt my aunt just kind of glaring at me to do better. As a person, I guess. Feeling better. Thanks. Good job, Ken. What other takeaways did you have in your expert knowledge of this weekend?
Jeepers.
And then we'll talk about the biggest story in the world and why she's everywhere.
Well, if you've been to New York Comic Con anytime through the last decade or so, one of the big panels every year is the panel for Archer. They get the whole cast in, they do a live read of something, they break some news. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hilarity. Because basically you've got a bunch of comedians who play these characters, and it's just nonstop fun. Again, they couldn't be there, since season 14, which just finished airing on FXX, is the last season, it was kind of a bummer. But they were teasing a big special announcement at the for the panel. So you go to the panel. The panel was the only person there on stage was the FXX vice president of promotion or whatever. And she announces that, okay, well, first we're going to show you the episode that just aired. So if you missed it Monday, you get to watch it now. And then after that episode, we all watched it, laughed, had a good time. after that episode, she comes back out and goes, okay, here's the announcement. We are doing a 3-part series finale called Archer Into the Cold, and it's dropping December 17th. And here's the first 10 minutes or so of it. And then they showed us, 10, 12 minutes of the first part of it. I wrote that up. It is on FilmBuffOnline. Plug.
Plug.
Yeah. So if you want to know what happens in that first 10, 12 minutes, feel free to pop over there.
That's a pretty good thing. I mean, certainly not as cool as seeing all the actors.
It's a nice announcement, but given the fact that, the cast couldn't be there, it still felt, very much,
well, and I think
anticlimactic.
The interesting thing there is that's a fan thing that's being impacted by the strike, right?
Yeah.
What I find intriguing is that we're now at a place where, and this kind of ties in, hear me out on this.
Okay.
We had a movie this weekend that grossed $128 million worldwide.
Yes, we did.
That is a movie that is a concert film from Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour. It grossed $128 million worldwide. It grossed anywhere, depending on how you're looking at it, 95 to 97 million domestic, which means it's in line to take out The Joker, the highest grossing October ever. It's already the highest grossing best star for any concert film in the history of concert films. And go ahead, say your thing. Go ahead, say
it. Which thing?
Oh, Stop Making Sense is back. So now every concert film is going to gross $100 million.
Yes.
Okay.
Then Talking Heads led the way. Even though not many people wanted to see the re-release. I'll admit the box office on it was not great. And I don't know if A made a nickel on this, but I saw it 3 times in theater, so.
Yeah, I know you kept on saying it's the last time. I swear it's the last time. It never was the last time. It's a never-ending last time. So we have Beyonce coming up in December for Renaissance, a film by Beyonce. But the interesting thing here, Rich, is, and somebody pointed it out today to me, and I was looking at it. First off, this is Taylor Swift making a direct deal with a theater chain. Yes. The exhibitor in this case, AMC Theaters, is also the distributor of the film. So it's the first time where we're having exhibitors become distributors in the same felt swoop, but it won't be the last because exhibitors are trying to find a way to last and to stay open. And so if AMC has to make a deal with Beyonce or AMC has to make a deal with Taylor Swift to make sure October and December are okay, they do it. And now they're releasing to other theaters. So now not only are they getting their theaters filled, but now they're filling other theaters and they're getting money back from other theaters. I think what's interesting here is Taylor Swift went to a bunch of studios for distribution rights on this, and they all fucking passed, Rich.
Honestly,
they all fucking passed.
Every executive who passed on this movie should be fired. If I was a stockholder in any of those studios, I'd be screaming bloody blue murder.
Passed, Rich. They all passed, so she had to go directly to the source, an exhibitor. And I think the interesting thing here is we just got done with the writer's strike. We have a Screen Actors Guild strike occurring where the studios are saying, trust us, we know what we're doing. And then you look out and we have no actors at major cons because they're on strike and they're deservedly like they should be on strike because they're not making the money they need to be making. We have the studios not realizing, I'll give you an example that made me laugh aside from the Taylor Swift thing, which is she went to every studio. That's one of the announcements out of this weekend was I went to all the studios and they didn't think it was going to do well in theaters. How the fuck do you pass on it? How do you pass on an event film where you're charging premium prices for all seats at all times? And
I believe it was Joe Esterhaus who said, nobody in this town knows nothing.
They don't know anything. And they're selling it that they know everything. And then you couple that with some of the other stories going around where they don't understand what they're doing. They have no concept of what they're doing. And now they're getting outflanked by the exhibitors because the exhibitors are just trying to survive. And I just think it's really difficult to trust the studio at this point when there's so many mistakes being made at any given week. You know what I mean? Like,
now, have you seen it?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
I felt so a couple of things. I don't have a lot of younger girls in my life. I feel a creep factor of me going to see it in a theater with the people I go to see movies with, which is 2 other guys, without my wife, and there's no way the kids are going to want to go to it. So I don't feel comfortable. Like, I know this sounds weird, but I just don't feel comfortable.
Dude, I understand. Me and a buddy went and saw Spice World in the movie because Richard O'Brien is in it, and we sat there like, we are probably the creepiest dudes right now.
Why are there 2 guys in Spice World? I just couldn't get past it. Now, also, I was on a cruise this weekend, so I couldn't go to see it.
However, I asked that because I did see it yesterday. Natasha and I went. We recorded an episode of our podcast, the Big Picture Podcast, and actually, I dropped that earlier today. So
you're just full of plugs today.
I am just pumping out content.
Plugs, just content, baby, content. Give us the content. So were you uncomfortable? But you went with a girl. See, I think you need to go with a younger woman or a woman.
If I was sitting there by myself, I would have waited until like 2 seconds before the movie started to walk in, sit down, and then the second the credits started, I am
hearing though it's very lively and it's very fun and it's very
I mean, it was a lot of preteen girls, who were up. They were dancing around. I mean, it was the 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning screening, so not everybody was like super crazy, but there was still some when we got there, all the girls are milling around and meeting up with friends and trading their doing the bracelet thing, which was fun.
I don't know that
honestly, let's make movies an experience at times. I saw on social media some people complaining about all of this. The kids are dancing around in the aisles and da-da-da. It's not like you're sitting there watching a Bergman film, for God's sakes. It's a joyous thing. They love the music. They want to get up and dance. They're having a good time.
Excuse me. I want to dance when Death is playing chess. You can go fuck yourself. I think that's a great dance moment.
But, I mean, people have gotten up at Rocky Horror and danced. We had, Spike Lee dancing in the aisles at Stop Making Sense of Toronto earlier this year. People have danced at concert films all the time. If you don't want people to be emotionally connected to what they're seeing, you're going to lose out on great moments like Captain America picking up Thor's hammer, for God's sakes.
Well, no, I think those are my favorite videos on the internet. Any of the videos where you have the moments in theaters where you hear the gasps and the audible like yes. Those are the greatest moments, and I'm happy for Taylor Swift. I'm happy. I mean, she's fucking everywhere right now, and she's impacting football. She's impacting Saturday Night Live. She's everywhere. I don't know if we're gonna not have a Travis Kelce relationship in 2 weeks when the movie's done playing. I don't know, but if she's saving theaters, I'm all for saving theaters. So, I will go to bat for her just in the sense that one of the cool things about her and Beyonce they've become American institutions in a sense because they are like when you look at the amounts of money that are spent in the areas where she had concerts and you realize she's pumping money into all of these communities. It's
I'm looking at what we have coming up and and amazingly the movie is only screening on like what Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. It's not even screening during like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which I think is kind of interesting. But I'm kind of looking ahead.
No, at AMC theaters down here, the theater I go to, it's running around the clock. It's going 11 to 11 every day. No.
On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as well?
Yeah, it's crazy down here. Okay. I don't know if Tay-Tay is more popular in Florida. Maybe because it's shaking it off. I don't know. Let's see.
I was under the impression that she wasn't letting it screen
Hold on.
at off the weekend.
Hold on. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me do my theater.
Okay. Well, while you're checking that really quick, I'm taking a look here at what's coming up over the next couple weekends. This coming weekend,
Bleak.
we've got. I'm sorry.
Well, bleak in box office sense.
Well, yeah,
it's we've got movie wise.
A bunch of smaller stuff on the 27th. Five Nights at Freddy's, Freelance, The Holdover.
Friday, Five Nights at Freddy's will do well just because you're right. It's not playing. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was wrong.
That's okay. That's okay. I will just hold your feet over the fire for that forever.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I deserve it.
Yeah, but so I think this movie is gonna be number one for a couple of weeks. This is definitely, even with the slightly higher ticket prices, I think this has some definite second, third, fourth viewing potential
and
for a lot of fan base.
Disposable income for her fan base is a real thing. And the movies that are coming out are just not going to compete. Joe writes, only concert I went to was AC/DC, I think 94. People watching is fun. I want tickets from the radio. Yes. Let's see what else. Joe, she can draw on the fans. All the best to her. Yeah, but the key, Ken, is that no studio wanted to do it. That to me is the key to everything, is that the studios are professing that we know what we're doing. And this is $128 million that is going directly to an exhibitor. Mm-hmm. And a good port, like think about the money generated from their theaters goes directly into AMC's coffers and vice versa. And then they're getting percentage from other theaters that are paying a decent penny to be able to show it in their theaters. So right. Exactly. We are a society that believes in the concept of highest bidder and best at what you do. What the Joker say? Don't do something for free, that which you can get paid for. When he's talking to the crowd, no studio want to do Star Trek again. Look where we are. Yes, but that's another thing. The Star Trek thing is an interesting. All these things where like they're selling off properties or moving things around. What's going to happen is during this latest round of talks and this latest contract, we're either going to have a merging. There's been talk down here that Disney might either be acquired by Apple or Disney might be acquired by, Netflix is going to sign an exclusive deal with Disney, which is weird because we're still doing Disney stuff. Disney Plus jacked up their prices. I went from paying $80 a year. It's going to be $120. So it's a big jack.
I have a feeling this coming year might be the year that the streaming bubble really just bursts. We're starting to see like a little bit of a leakage out of this balloon right now, but I have a feeling next year.
Like I said, they've messed up all of the things where they're okay. So if you're telling me a studio is supposed to know something, they should know their fans and they should know what their fans want. And if you're telling me Disney, which I know everybody picks on Disney, but Disney does not want to make anything that you're not going to fall in love with. I know that's not the reigning, the reigning criticism on the right is that they're out to get us and our kids. But in reality, Disney doesn't want to make anything that doesn't succeed 100%. So if they're messing up with these demographics and not being able to fix things and running into a wall with, firing the staff from Daredevil and all this other shit that's going on behind the scenes, which is messy, not getting Blade up and running in a thought-provoking and fast manner when that that's been we've been waiting on him for a little bit. Not getting the X-Men up and running in a thought-provoking and fast manner, not getting Fantastic Four up and running. It's if they're screwing up, that means a lot of other studios are screwing up too. And you look at somebody like Zaslav, who doesn't look like he gives a shit about anything that isn't a cooking show, or people being naked and thrown on an island, or somebody selling a house that they just bought on the cheap because somebody's parents died. So I don't know. But well, you know what I do know? Christopher Lee, he might be the best Dracula. I know that. That I know.
Marvelous.
He Rich, spectacular.
Yes.
Like, so the chill of the tomb won't leave your blood for hours after you come face to face with Dracula. So we're doing a horror of Dracula tonight. The production design in these movies, if you look at them and you're watching them, right? I think the most incredible thing when you're watching these movies, production wise, is how effortless it looks. It looks effortless, like everything on camera, the shots, the fucking the design, how things look, how things are created, the costumes. Peter Cushing has a costume in this movie that I think is both violet and purple velvet. It's beautiful. And I was looking. Oh,
he was a pimp, man. That's all it was.
Well, but what I'm saying is, for as boring, like for as exciting as the Christopher Lee outfit is, which is a really stark black, with a really cool long cape. Everything about this production is beautiful, and then it gets better because the script is gorgeous. Like, it's a true adaptation in the sense that they pick and choose the pieces they want to take from the Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they fix some things. They cut out characters that aren't going to make the cut. They cut out sequences that don't need to be made. Although we had an entire film about that sequence this summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little jarring. I found as I was watching it, I was like, "Oh, we're in England. Okay, here we are."
Well, like that's the other thing. Like, I think the most interesting thing about these adaptations by Hammer Horror, right? The Hammer House of Horror, is that they take things, and it's like, you know what it reminded me of a little bit? It reminded me a little bit of like the Snyder films putting Gotham and Metropolis right next to each other across the bay. We're in Bavaria. They literally go from England to wherever the fuck they were talking about in like 20 minutes, and then they're back the following morning. And I think it's really interesting, the adaptation aspect. We have characters that have the same names, but they're different. Like, everything's different.
I'm gonna blow that analogy into the water by pushing up my nerd glasses here with my finger and saying, for a long time, Gotham City and Metropolis have been across the bay from each other. It wasn't just a Snyder thing.
Really?
Oh yeah, I can remember at least far back as the Prestige miniseries, World's Finest, back in the mid '90s or something like that, where the Joker and Lex Luthor team up. It being that way.
I feel
a nerd. I'm divorced. Go figure.
I understand. I don't know how it happened. I always view Gotham and Metropolis being far apart, only because every time a Batman the Animated Series that Superman was involved, Bruce would have to get on a plane to go to Metropolis. So I don't know. I understand, but I'm just saying it was a jarring experience. But I think the interesting thing here is it's Bavaria.
About DC geography, so I don't.
Yeah, no, but it's Bavaria, right? And but like the set designs are really cool. The bar that Von Helsing goes into is really neat and kind of like a little nook. We're getting to Legacy because I think, like, the interesting thing, I want to know what filmmaker saw this movie, because I feel that there's like chunks of movies throughout history that are scattered throughout this movie where you're watching them and you go, oh, that reminds me of this. And we're going to talk about them in Legacy. I don't know if they, like, I'm going to say yes, right? When we get to Legacy, we're going to talk about it. But the production design is so amazing. The script is it's tight, because they were making movies, like, I think they were looking to make movies an hour and 20 minutes, right? They spend an $81,000 production budget. of which Christopher Lee is paid £750. So $750 to become the Prince of Darkness. And it's just one of the wonderful, like, the script is so tight, and it is a strict adaptation. So you could have, if you have really big Dracula fans in your life who see this, they could get a little pissy. Like, why is this person like this person? But it's like, when you look at the pieces and the movement, it really works. Right? And
I mean, Harker is presented, as a librarian who's come to help the good count organize all the manuscripts he has about, and it really is like, no, he's on a secret mission to kill Dracula. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool twist. And wait, how
we
does
don't
he
even
know
know
about
why?
They
don't even take the time to explain why. Like, why he's on a mission to kill Dracula, and how Von Helsing knows him.
Von Helsing sent him because Von Helsing was following after him, and they were just planned that together, and it all went tits up from there, though.
Just the idea that Von Helsing has agents that he's sent out coursing through the land to find people is really interesting. I think another thing that has to be talked about production, the choices made by Terrence Fisher and Jimmy Sangster behind the scenes, making Dracula a sexual beast. The idea of using Christopher Lee's sensuality, it's very subversive. It's ahead of the time. It, like, the idea, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like every woman in the movie, when you're watching them, it's like, I'm so excited for Dracula's coming for me.
Yes.
I'm a flutter. Like, I'm gonna open the windows and take down the garlic.
I mean, it's still 1958, so we can't get too explicit about it. But
there's heaving bosoms. There's very nice silky necks. There's very big fangs that are plunging deep into those necks. And I would argue with you. I wouldn't argue with you, but I would say for everybody watching, there is a very slight sexual tension between Jonathan Harker and the Count as well. It's a weird. It's there. It's very subversive. For 58.
Yeah, he's really, Jonathan Harker's really the only male that gets turned in this thing. It's always the females that he's going after. So you may be onto something there. I
just think it's there. I'm just saying it's there. It's noticeable. It's a very noticeable thing. Because, like, look at how goofy Harker looks sitting in the casket. Like, he looks happy. I got caught by the Count.
Seems how, like, Dracula is always about sexual magnetism and stuff. I guess it does make sense that there would be a bisexuality to the character that I don't think we've ever really seen explored that before.
It's never been explored, and that's tell me there's not a movie there. But
hold on, gotta make a note here.
Make Dracula like everyone.
Okay, everybody.
But I think also production wise, I was looking at the production schedule was so quick, right? They film from principal photography starts November 11th, 57, ends Christmas Eve 57. And then they did the effects work that wrapped January of 58. So they literally, in a little over
6-7 weeks.
6-7 weeks shoot. Super fast, super effective. It's made for £81,000 at the time. And you're just looking at it like, Anthony Hines, who's executive producer, basically says Christopher Lee was our Dracula from the get-go. I also like that he, Christopher Lee behind the scenes is not getting paid a lot. He's fourth billed in the movie, Rich. And he fucking dominates the movie, Rich. Just the way he looks is intimidating and also, like, stylized and charged. I want to say hi, Jamie Hill. Hi, how you doing? Of course, Jamie Hill, one of the people that's on our network, and also star of this year's horror hit, indie hit, Skinamarink. So welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Very,
And
very glad to have you.
always glad to have her and everybody else who shows up from our network. But the production's quick, it's fast, efficient. And it's an adaptation. It's a true adaptation. Jimmy Sangster really kind of like put a polish on it. Gave Christopher Lee a lot of things to do. And the production also produces some of the most, we talked about this last week, some of the most impressive things that are being used in vampire films to this day are in this movie. The fucking fangs. Like, not that you wouldn't have any fangs in a vampire movie, but these fangs, the pronounced fangs that are more like they appear more dramatic and bloody. The blood, like the amount of blood on display for 58 is, was X-rated in the day. But like the prepared wooden stakes, the mallets, the crosses, the intricate crosses that Von Helsing's carrying. He's passing out crosses to everybody, and he has the giant one that he just kind of like pulls out when he's in real trouble. And it just, the production, it's top notch. It looks beautiful, even though it's a movie that's 65 years old. Yeah, 65. It looks better than movies we get today. Do you know what I mean? Like, just the production behind it. You agree with this, right? Like, it looks beautiful. The sets are nice. I was telling you, one of the coolest things when you're looking at production on this movie is when you watch the movie, Christopher Lee is so tall with that cape and in just all black. When he gets into a doorway, he fills the doorway. So it's like this intimidating thing of like, who's that stranger that's filling up the fucking doorway? And also, and like all the women are swooning, and then like he's in a window and he fills the window and everything's shot up. So he's in charge looking down. And also like one of my favorite shots in the entire movie, Parker walks into the Dracula estate, right? It's right at the beginning, and he's going to a table and there's food laid out. And there's this wonderful shot where he's like, it's a stairway, he comes down the stairway and he walks towards the table. A red, beautiful, like satin carpet, whatever. But there's a camera thing that goes, it had to be on a dolly or a train, and it just goes from one end of the table past him towards the doorway. And it's a really wonderful tracking shot. And it's ahead of its time when you're looking at it, right? And also the brooding sexuality is ahead of its time. And it's all choices. It's all a concept that we don't want to do the same thing that they did with Universal. We want to get a different view of Dracula. We think he's a sexual predator kind of thing. And one of the things that they talk about also about the production is that Christopher Lee went in going that I'm the hero. He's the hero of this piece. He thinks he's the hero. He thinks Von Helsing is crashing in on his gig.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real interesting thing. What the words he used are, my character is heroic, erotic, and romantic, and everybody else is jealous of him. When you think about that, it's something inherent in the filmmakers to be able to instill in that and get that across to both the actors and the audience. Because that's what I was thinking the whole time. Like, if Von Helsing's yapping away, Christopher Lee doesn't say a word in the movie, by the way. So we're clear. Not a fucking word. Which is also something that's going on right now. We're getting all these movies with no dialogue.
Well, he does say make yourself. He does have some interchange with
Parker.
Parker at the beginning.
But but the rest of the movie is like whenever he's with a chick, he doesn't talk. He just looks.
Yeah, no. Pretty much after that, it's just he's on. He's on the run. Dodging everything that, and it is kind of Van Helsing's movie, as the book is. It's always told from the good guy's side, but his idea that, oh no, I'm the hero and I'm trying to avoid being killed by these guys who are jealous of my
My gig, my
sexual
undead gig. Yeah.
um, it I think it gives some interesting motivation to Dracula outside of just, ooh, I'm
I need
evil.
I need
Ooh.
blood. I need blood
Yeah.
to live.
Or I'm
Actually,
just trying to survive,
how,
in this cursed state.
how about this production tip? So, middle of the movie, Mina goes and she's tricked by Dracula into going to meet her husband. And they were talking about um so the actress who played Mina, the amazing Melissa Stribling, basically says she walks in, she meets her husband in the morning, and the director of the film is like, okay, here's your direction, Terrence Fisher, and he basically says to her, um, I want you to come in, like, and I just want to make sure I get it right because it's one of the greatest things I've ever read. When she arrives back after having night away all night, she said that all in that close up of the door. She's been done the whole night through. Please, I remember Melissa saying, Terry, how should I play the scene? So I told her, listen, you should imagine you have had a whale of a sexual night, the one of your whole sexual experience. Give me that in your face. And Rich, she does.
Mm-hmm.
That shot, she's wearing like a mink stole around her neck so you can't see the bite wounds. And she just looks like she's been ravaged. And she looks so happy. And like a loveless marriage with Michael Gough is just Michael Gough, just loveless, no sex, drinks a lot of tea. You know what I mean? Like it's just, but I think it's everything in the production that comes across is perfect. Ken writes, Frank Langella's Dracula was sexual erotic, of course. That was after Lee's Dracula. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about it, but I don't think you see Frank Langella's Dracula. I don't think you see Coppola's Dracula being the way it is without Christopher Lee.
No.
I it all starts here because up until this point, Dracula is just a bad guy that happens to drink blood. And then, this gets turned into I've come through generations to find you, right? That's where we head. So production's great. We do box office and we do opening. This is a weird one again because it's an older movie, so we have a real tough time like tracking numbers. But here's the thing: it opens in Milwaukee, Wisconsin first. Rich, on May 8th.
Because when you think great horror movies and
you think 1958, you think Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, home of the Packers and Horror of Dracula.
Yeah, that feels kind of like the U.S. distributor here just didn't, which I think was Warner Brothers, just was kind of like.
No, Warner Brothers. I think Warner Brothers picked it up after the fact. I think Warner Brothers. I think it had more to do with Universal, because Universal had qualms about them releasing movies. Like they made them change it from Dracula to Horror of Dracula.
It was Universal. That's right.
So nobody would get, because it also played on a double bill with Universal International Film.
The thing that wouldn't die.
The thing that couldn't die.
Couldn't die.
Or wouldn't die. Whatever. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. And then it opens in London on May 21st of 1958. It ends up grossing, again, £81,000 to make. It ends up grossing through a lifetime £3.5 million, which is a pretty good. It's not Curse of Frankenstein money, but it's not bad, right? Worldwide rental, and then I'm going to include it with the box office. There have been 7 different sets of this movie out on Blu-ray and various ways that have boosted its profit margin. Now, The Blu-rays and everything are released by Warner Brothers and New Line. So, um, bear with me. It's a long list. It makes its first DVD appearance in 2002 on a standalone disc. It's later re-released in September of 2007 as a film 4-pack from Warner Brothers and New Line, 4 film favorites line of DVDs. Dracula's Risen from the Grave, Horror of Dracula, Taste the Blood of Dracula, and Dracula AD 1972. A really nice four disc set, actually, if you look at it. 2010, Turner Classic Movies, again owned by Warner Brothers, releases it in a 4-pack along with Dracula's Risen from the Grave, The Curse of Frankenstein, and Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, which is like the 2 big Hammer films and the 2 sequels of big Hammer films, which is also a good set. And then it was originally released.
If memory serves, I'm trying to check this as we're talking here. Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed might have also starred yet another Star Wars alum, besides, in making that box set kind of a big thing. Because, oh no, I'm sorry. It was Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. That was David Prowse. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they're all like kind of looking around. Then it gets really weird for them because basically, September of 2011, they find out that there is a Japanese release print that was found by cartoonist Simon Rowenson in the National Film Center at the National Museum of Modern Art in Tokyo. First 5 reels have been destroyed, but the last 4 reels were recovered after a fire. The recorded reels include the last 36 minutes of the film and has 2 extended sequences, one of which is the discovery of a perfect version of the iconic disintegration scene, which is when Dracula gets hit by the sunlight at the end. And then they found out that wasn't the full piece of footage because of eyewitness accounts of what the footage should look like. And then they release another one in 2012 that has the restored on a 3-disc set and on Blu-ray in 2013. And it has the 2007 BFI restoration and the 2012 high definition Hammer restoration. So it's basically, and then they did another restoration in 2018 for the Warner Brothers Archive collection. And this is from the 2002 set, 2007 DVD, and then the Universal International name and logo are restored. And the opening credits bear the original Dracula title rather than Horror Dracula. Amazing how much money has been generated by this movie with regards to not just box office, but also the amount of DVDs it's been released and how many times it's been on in a video version.
Earner for Universal.
For Universal early, and then Warner Brothers. The special effects scene, by the way, we're a little bit out of production, but the special effects scene, by the way, where he appears to peel and decay, was very extensive. They used mortician's wax, all kinds of things to basically convey natural skin tone so they could melt it off his face and fingers and hands and just leave the raw marks underneath. And that was only available in its full version in some Japanese print that they eventually found and restored. So it doesn't do gangbusters forever at the box office, but it is a perennial big release from Warner Brothers, and they trot it out whenever they find a new piece or something. They do a restoration on it. I think that's an incredible, first off, of how important the film is, and secondly, it's almost as many discs as I've owned of the Star Wars trilogy, which is again.
It's rivaling the number of releases Evil Dead 2 has had.
Yeah, or Army of Darkness. A very cool nerd reference, and I will poke my nerd glasses there. Some comments. Joe, my personal opinion, Hammer did it better. Universal movies are quite a bit older.
Go up to. You
Oh,
missed
okay.
two.
I missed two.
Yeah.
No, we got Frank Langella, right? We got Frank Langella.
Okay. Did we?
Yeah,
Okay.
curious because I'm
I'm
still
sorry.
learning. Fascinating. How do I ask this? Which studio did it better and had more successful monster movies, Universal or Hammer? Okay, that's easy. Universal built their entire studio on the monster movies. Now the question becomes: first off, all of these movies are enjoyable, and they're in like I don't want to say Hammer or Universal's better. I know we can have fans that pick which one they think is better. I don't know that they're necessarily better. I know that when I watch them, I'm watching something that I think whatever time frame it's witnessed in, even the current time frame, you can see the brilliance of it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like when you watch a Universal horror, like an original Universal horror film, you can see the brilliance in it, and you can see the where it, like how it launched horror films. When you
It
watch
had
a
this backing of the studio process. That even if Universal wasn't quite to the par of like an MGM or a Warner Brothers, they were still, not Poverty Row like RKO or any of them.
right,
So
and it made the studio. So like
yeah,
you can't look at a Universal horror film and not be thoroughly impressed with one, how much money they made and how they basically set the studio up for life. No Fast and Furious, no Minions, none of that shit without the Universal horror films. Now, are the Hammer films a little bit better? Well, for us in this present day, you look at them, they're a little bit gorier, so they're gonna fit our sensibilities better.
yeah,
But the Universal
and they
films are really good.
yeah, the Universal films, well, at least the pre-code ones, which are just barely the first couple, they could be a little bit edgier. And then the production code came in 34, and you don't get something like in Bride of Frankenstein where there was like issues with, well, these people are outright mocking the creative powers of God. When they talk about being gods themselves. And then Son of Frankenstein or one of the later House of Frankenstein stuff like that. You don't get that idea being played with anymore. Here for the Hammer stuff, they're a little bit more relaxed. They're further away from that, so they can kind of get into some of that. And we saw that whole God playing God thing
Yeah,
in our last episode.
yeah. Peter
And,
Cushing's Frankenstein is definitely they're past the God portion of it, where
and
he really
here we noted before, we have the sexuality of Christopher Lee's Dracula, which I don't think you can really get away, could have gotten away with in the Universal stuff. So
they're both, but they're good. They're both good. I don't want to. I wouldn't pit them. I actually think you could do Dracula and then the Horror of Dracula together, and really see how the character changes over a time, and then you could pair it with Langella's Dracula and Coppola's Dracula and have like a whole day of it. Joe, my personal opinion, Hamilton and Universal movies are quite a bit older. Fair, but again, the only reason Hammer was able to do it was because Universal did it first. So I mean, one of the things about our show that Rich and I love is that tying all of these DNA strands together is what makes it special. Amazon Free has been playing Universal and Hammer films on the Universal Monsters channel. Past weekend was Abbott and Costello Meet All the Monsters. Yeah, that's another thing that Universal did exceptionally well that Hammer didn't. Universal was able to capture a comedy aspect of horror that changed the nature of horror from not always being super scary, but also horror comedies. That's something that Hammer doesn't do. Like, there's funny things in Hammer films, but they're not played for comedic effect. Last comment, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. Hammer films had movies from Universal to build off of. Yes, they did, but it was also a time period thing. Being able to build off of them because of what was allowed at certain points. Let's talk about where these movies stand, right?
Well, just really quickly before we move on.
Yeah.
To Ken's point about Abbott and Costello meeting all the monsters. This summer, I had a chance to see Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein in a theater on a 35 millimeter print with a lot of people who had never seen it before, and it played like gangbusters. There's some great stuff in there, and it held up. So even, you know, the latter day stuff where, you know, some diehard Puritan fans of the Universal Monster stuff are like, ugh, the Abbott and Costello stuff, all the big crossover nonsense. I'm sorry. It was a good film.
I also think Abbott and Costello is the gateway drug, right? If you show a kid Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, those kids are hooked for life.
Oh,
like, because you can never get that feeling of watching a comedic horror film for the first time. You know what I mean? And laughing to get rid of your scare, right? Which has become, you know, it's become like the gold standard. Critics reviews now and then. First off, this movie's at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. I know we use it as an aggregate score place. Audience's award is at 81. So you're like, if people see this movie, they like this movie. If people watch this movie, they like this movie. And critics, a lot of critics were able to kind of get a great response. Vincent Canby, one of the great film critics in movie Motion Picture Daily. Hammer Films, the same British production unit which last year restored Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to its rightful place in the screen's chamber of horrors, has now even more successfully brought back the granddaddy of all vampires, Count Dracula. It's chillingly realistic in detail, and at times as gory as the law allows. The physical production is first rate, including the settings, costume, Eastman color photography, and special effects. I don't know that you get a better understanding of it than anything with that review. I think it translates very well now, because I think if you're a fan of vampire movies and you're a fan of, like, this is the one where you get all of the sexual tension stuff. This is it. This is the ground zero of Dracula being a sexual predator, of vampires being sexual predators. It's the ground zero. And once you watch it, like, and I was telling Rich, I think, you know, Harker is the only guy that gets turned. There's something there, because it's a weird, there's a weird vibe when he's like, he gets into, like, Christopher Lee gets into his space at one or two moments. Like, so I think, you know, for the most part, like, it holds up remarkably well. It's an hour and 20 minutes. It's literally the amount of time you spend, you know, making breakfast in the morning, and it's an hour, 20 minutes, and it's up. It moves fast. The effects are pretty good, pretty great. Set design is beautiful. The camera work is exquisite. Christopher Lee is probably the best Dracula. I know we have Gary Oldman fans. I know everybody's a Gary Oldman fan, and they're a Gary Oldman fan. I'm going to tell you this. This is a stark truth, Rich. You're a fan of Gary Oldman's Dracula because you like the puppet show at the beginning. Everybody
Oh, damn.
That's the truth. The truth hurts. You love the Gary Oldman version, not necessarily because of everything that comes after it, but that puppet sequence at the beginning is bangers. It's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's why everybody ends up loving that movie. And, like, the one costume where he's chasing her down through England and he's wearing the outfit with, like, you know, the top hat and the, you know, the cane, and, you know, but this Dracula, he's imposing. He's a sexual predator. He looks remarkable, like the hair glossed back. He's statuesque. He's intimidating and like erotic at the same time. I thoroughly enjoy these movies for what they bring to the table and how they turn everything on its head. I love that the Curse of Frankenstein became more about God being a creator kind of thing, and this is more sexual predator vampire. I just can't get enough. What do you think?
I like that, you know, in broad strokes, this is an adaptation of Stoker's novel. but it certainly takes some changes. Like I mentioned before, Harker being on the secret mission to kill Dracula, which gets dropped on us in like the first 5 minutes. I'm like, oh boy, we're
Writing in a book.
doing a remix of some of these popular elements of the novel, and this is kind of fun. I'm digging this, and I don't think this movie lets up. There's not a slow moment, and I mean, there's always a few moments of gore here and there, but particularly when I think it was when Lucy gets staked. It's just a close up of the steak and go and blood, blah. And I was just like, ooh, I like that. That was a good shot. It was it really felt like that was pushing the envelope for the 1950s. So overall,
I want to say I love the fight at the end. I think the fight at the end is one of the Dracula is literally just trying to get away, and Van Helsing gets in the same room with him, and they're squaring off, and Van Helsing notices the sun's coming out, so it becomes a race to get to the curtains. And I'm just like, I haven't seen Dracula being like, Dracula isn't often portrayed as a skulker kind of thing, but Lee's Dracula is both erotic and heroic and whatever, but he's also like, I'm a person that I need to be underground. I don't want to be out. I don't want anybody. You're following me around, sir.
There's,
you know what I mean? Like,
there's one thing about that kind of bugs me though, about that final confrontation. And this is maybe just, how I kind of look at the Dracula lore. The idea of a cross, a crucifix, is repellent to vampires because, that's God, that's the son of God. And there's like a whole religious subtext about where do vampires come from? Are they fallen angels, or what? Or, or were they all created by a fallen angel or a demon or Satan or what have you? And so I like the idea that, if they're confronted with an actual crucifix, which most likely has been blessed by a priest, they recoil. So when Peter Cushing grabs the two candlesticks and just forms a cross at the end, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for, I understand it's like, okay, improvised, here's a crucifix or a cross. And it's kind of an in the moment thing where you're like, oh, that was clever. He made his own cross so he could, help destroy Dracula.
Get out of here. I understand. That's perfect. That's
good. I look a little bit more at some of the religious lore underlying vampires, and it doesn't quite work for me. But
okay. But I like
that's my problem.
The fight does have a crispness to it.
I was gonna say that's my problem, not necessarily the movie's problem, because the movie doesn't establish any of that baggage that I'm bringing to the scene. So,
well, no, I think the fight is very crisp though, but that's
it's a great sequence.
Also, I want to point out one of my favorite things about the movie is there's a sequence where Van Helsing is talking into a microphone. He's doing it like a dictaphone kind of thing, where he's transcribing notes and he's going through Harker's diary, and it's a super cool sequence. And it's the first time I think that we've had vampirism that is translated out to an addiction and also a contagion. Like, think about it. He talks about contagion. He talks about that it's very similar to drug addicts. The entrancement of the subject to Dracula, and he talks about the contagion that he puts in their blood, and I think that is a perfect subtext to legacy and franchise vibe. But this movie has it all, Rich. I was thinking about the ending, right? The ending, by the way, is one of the weirder endings in the sense that it ends, and this is something you actually have to research and watch it. The movie ends with the Zodiac wheel, because at the end of the film, Dracula is destroyed on an inlaid Zodiac, which is on the floor, and it has quotes in Latin and Greek. So brush up on your Homer, brush up on your The quotes read something along the lines of, "The mind of men who live on earth is such as the day the father of gods and men, Zeus, brings upon them." The outer reel, written in Latin, is a quote from Hesiod via Bartholomew Anglico. Wow, that's fucking lots of verbs and letters. Tellus vero primum, sequitum genuit parum, sibi colium stellis ornatum, ut ipsum totum obliget, utque esse beatus dis sedis tuta semper. And earth first bore starry heaven, equal to herself to cover her on every side, and to be ever sure abiding for the place of blessed gods. Dracula's ring, by the way, is left on the glyph for the zodiac sign Aquarius, which is interesting. And tell me, Rich, that the people who made Flash Gordon didn't see this movie.
I'm sure Mike Hodges, the director of Flash Gordon, grew up in England seeing, the 1958
Tell me that the ring, and tell me that the dust on the ring, and tell me that Ming's ring is not the same goddamn shot. And I was dying. I was like, tell me you weren't kind of hoping that Dracula reached down and got his signet ring back. I was definitely hoping for that.
With a question mark and then some laughter and then a Queen song at the end.
Yes, exactly. It would have been perfect for me. I love Flash Gordon. I can't get enough of that movie. Anyway, we're not talking about that though. Also, tell me that John Landis, who made the American Werewolf in London, one of my favorite horror films of all time, didn't get the slaughtered lamb from this fucking bar. Because it looks just like the slaughtered lamb. The people are fucking grumpy, as in the slaughtered lamb. The reaction Von Helsing gets is very similar to the reaction David gets with all the grumpy people in the bar and the one person who wants to help him out. You know what I mean? Like, that
feels kind of tropey overall. The village bar that looks suspiciously at strangers and there's like, get out of here, leave us to ourselves.
It does, but
I wouldn't be surprised if Landis had seen this and was maybe subconsciously drawing.
Okay, let's more legacy. Michael Gough. Does Michael Gough become Alfred without a steady drum beat from Tim Burton, who clearly watched the Hammer horror films as a kid? You know what I mean? So we get Michael Gough. I'm just throwing out theories, okay? I'm just throwing out theories as I was sitting there watching, going through my head of all the things that I see in this movie.
Well, he doesn't do a lot of Hammer horror. I'm kind of flipping through his res here. We've got Horror of Dracula, Horrors of the Black Museum, Conga, 1962 adaptation of Phantom of the Opera, which was Hammer, Dr. Terror's. Okay, yeah, I guess he has. It's just he has a lot of work going on here. So, even though some of that is horror, it's still it's enough that I think that, yeah, definitely Tim Burton probably did take notice of him.
Yeah, I think the look and design, you could trace a direct line from this to Sleepy Hollow, or like there's a through line to it. Other legacy stuff. I mean, obviously the obvious ones. Frank Langella's Dracula isn't quite as hot and sexy, or neither is Gary Oldman's without Christopher Lee's Dracula, right? But it's the imposing nature of this Dracula that I find most intriguing. Also, because I think a lot of it for me is the doorway sequences, right? I'm a slasher guy. I love slasher films. The doorway sequence in a slasher film is the most important thing ever. And I kept on looking at the doorway of Christopher Lee filling out the doorway because he's so fucking big. And all I could think of was every slasher film I've ever seen where the monster is in the doorway and you're looking up at it and you're just like, holy fuck, I'm gonna get hit with an axe or a machete, or I'm gonna get hit with a fucking butcher knife. And it's there. The DNA is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's like the people who saw these movies saw and basically said, well, what if we put a mask on it and that person standing in the doorway, will it be similar to how Christopher Lee looks? And no, it won't be, because Christopher Lee looks amazing in this. But the idea of a giant man in a doorway, it's not tropey. It's definite DNA where you look at it and you go, because it happens in this movie so much. It's doorways, windows, like he is consistently filling frames. And it's just, he looks so imposing. Like, and you can't get around him either. Like, if you went through the doorway, you could try to get in the doorway, Rich, but I feel you'd be pushed out of the doorway because he's big. You know what I mean? And he just fills space.
Yeah.
And tell me anybody who ever wears a cape on screen wears it half as good as Christopher Lee going up that first flight of stairs. It's beautiful. I don't know. I had so many
it's great stuff overall.
I had so many things running through my head. Are either of you fans of Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing? I'll say it. I think I'm going to say it for both of us. No, we are not. I'm not a fan of Van Helsing. I'm not a fan of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I view as the same goddamn movie. They're very close. Like there
are one or two things I did like in Van Helsing. The character design for Frankenstein with the glass head, so you can see into the brain and everything. The windows along the top of his skull, if you remember. I remember liking that. I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's new. That's different. That's clever. Overall, I don't think the script really works. There's a lot of action that doesn't make sense. I didn't think what's his face who directed it? I'm drawing a blank on his name. Sommers. Yeah, wasn't it?
Stephen Sommers.
Yeah.
Did a much better job of The Mummy.
Yeah. The Mummy's a much better film. It just didn't work for me. And if it works for you, though, God bless. I'm happy for you that you found things in there to enjoy.
It's interesting you bring this up, Ken, on a night where we're talking about one of the greatest Draculas, because I think the Van Helsing Dracula sucks. Like, I think the biggest problem with the Van Helsing Dracula is the Richard Roxburgh Dracula and Van Helsing. I think that's the biggest problem with the movie. He's a wishy-washy Dracula. He's not sexy. He blends in with his castle, and he's trying to have little babies. He's not trying to fuck anyone. He just wants kids. He's like a weird daddy. Interesting. This is a horrible Dracula fight off. Blade 3 Dracula is the worst. I actually don't mind the Dracula in Blade 3. I don't think Blade 3 is a great movie. Blade 3 has all kinds of problems and issues, including fighting behind the scenes and an outward hatred of Ryan Reynolds that was clearly on display in every waking moment of that film. The Dracula is not the worst part about that movie. There are so many other worst parts of Blade 3. He's not the worst. Again, the Dracula of Van Helsing is incredibly bad. How about this, Rich? For Legacy franchise, let's do our favorite Draculas, because I'm going to shock people with my favorite Draculas. I think Christopher Lee jumps to number one, right? The moment you start rewatching the Hammer films, he dominates for a good 20 years playing the character. So I think he actually, he's made sequel after sequel. He's made a ton of the movies. And interesting, when you read about it, he's very despondent, actually, that he never got to make a truly great Dracula movie with his take on the character, which is heroic sexual predator that's also, kind of like charismatic, charming, whatever. So he never got to do what he wanted to do. I'm going to go the Dracula from the Monster Squad, because I love that Dracula. I think that particular Dracula is one of the better ones, and Lugosi is really good. You know what I mean? But the actor in the Monster Squad who plays Dracula is
Duncan Regehr.
fantastic. Yes, Duncan Regehr is fantastic. And then I go Lugosi, and then I go Oldman, tied for third. Langella's down on the list, but like the Dracula from Blade 3 he's boring because he's a big, huge Dracula, right? Again, no sexual chemistry, nothing, because the Blade movies are all action based. There's no sexual predator, like vampire predator thing to it. I think that's the key, though, Ken. Is the discovery is that the Draculas who are dominant, kind of sexual chemistry Draculas are the ones that actually end up suiting the best. They end up being the best Draculas. That's my way around it. I just the Dracula from Von Helsing is he's the pits for me. He's the absolute I just want babies. Like Ken writes Frank Langella is my number one. I think that and again, Ken, I think you and I are in the same age range. That might be you saw that movie when you were a kid or something, and it just Frank Langella's take on the character stuck with you, and it's a good take. When you get to play the Prince of Darkness, like it's very important that you get it right. And also, just really quick, because we're doing legacy and franchise, we've had 2 Draculas this year. I think one is more successful than the other, but they're both kind of meh. Because again, we don't have the sexual tension with them. Cage's Dracula doesn't have it in Renfield, and the Dracula in the Last Voyage of the Demeter is like a giant bat thing. So
it was just a monster. There was no character to that character.
Yeah,
it was just it. Last Voyage of the Demeter, I see it as Dracula by way of an alien. Really,
yep. It's Dracula on a boat. It's Dracula on a boat. Yeah, but not bad. It's not bad. I think it's better than Renfield for me.
Nosferatu.
Nosferatu. Nah, that's great. Okay, we should make a shirt out of that. No, we should make a shirt out of that. But the franchise legacy viability, I think everything with the modern Dracula films all comes from Christopher Lee's portrayal. And Von Helsing being like a hell-bent crusader gives us all kinds of like you could get a Dr. Loomis vibe off of Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance in Halloween, off of Von Helsing. He's hunting him down like a dog. You know what I mean? Like, so the franchise legacy viability is incredible, actually. And this particular version of Dracula goes on to inspire so many things. The contact lens,
7 sequels,
7 or 8 sequels. The wooden, like, if you watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the stakes that they had at the ready. This was the first movie that had them. This is the first movie that had a mallet. First movie that, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much from this movie. I'm so glad we're doing the Hammer films for Halloween, and that leads us to the end of tonight. As we talk about the Hammer films that we're doing next week, and next week is a wild one. If you haven't seen it, it's fucking ridiculous. And then 2 weeks from now we're gonna have a real wild one. Because here we go. Next week we are doing this movie. It is called Horror Express. Actually, if you look at the poster, Rich, maybe we answered my question by this moment. One of the questions I had for Rich in the green room before we talked about the show tonight: when does Christopher Lee become a bigger star than Peter Cushing? Interesting. This is 1972's Horror Express, which is a Hammer film, and it is indescribable. How about let's if you're interested in watching it and seeing it, it's available all over the place, including $5 You can buy it on Vudu, but it's also on Tubi and a couple other places. But
Mm-hmm.
it's basically Alien on a train, not Alien, The Thing on a train. And it's got Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee working together with Telly Savalas. So if you decide you don't want to watch a movie with Kojak, Peter Cushing, and Christopher Lee, I can't help you. I can't help you. Horror Express is next week's movie. And it's going to be a blast. We got some other comments. Oh, this is a good one. This is one I missed, and actually, it is one of my favorites. Actually, George Hamilton was the best Dracula. Just kidding. Actually, Love at First Bite is a fantastic Dracula movie. Love at First Bite is, but interesting here. You're saying George Hamilton is the best Dracula. Just kidding. But in reality, he is a lover Dracula. He is a charismatic sexual predator Dracula. Right? I mean, do you have a favorite vampire movie? Not Dracula, just vampires. I like Priest and Carl Urban and the Vamp. Favorite vampire. Okay, so this is a good question. Would you like to go first? You have a favorite vampire movie? I know horror is not necessarily your bag.
Boy. Favorite vampire movie.
That's pressure.
Life Force, actually.
Life Force is an interesting choice. Speaking of sexually charged vampires.
Yes, but beyond that, I like the idea of like vampires from space, or their vampires are actually like an alien that has come down to Earth, as opposed to.
Do you remember Vampires from Space?
10 minutes ago, I was going on about the spiritual aspects of
now you're like Vampires from Space.
And this does something entirely different and antithetical to religion, being science. But I like that it took a big swing like that.
It is a big swing. It's a big concept movie. I would also say it's interesting you say Vampires from Space. Do you remember, and this is definitely going to date us, so be prepared. Do you remember the Buck Rogers episode where the space vampire was in the corner and it was chasing Wilma Darren? Oh my God, it was so bad.
Terrible,
but it was. He was the only person she could see. She could only see him, and nobody else could see him. So vampire movie. I'm not gonna say it's high, although it probably is a tie. I'm gonna say Fright Night. I'm gonna say The Lost Boys because I grew up in the '80s, and I think Fright Night. Again, though, Fright Night is Jerry Dandridge is a sexual predator vampire. He's a beast out for blood and for women. So or guys, depending on whatever that guy that's in the movie that lives with Jerry is, right? But Fright Night and The Lost Boys. I think The Lost Boys is also pretty astounding in its how it's put together and how it was people that I was growing up with watching the Coreys, and Jason Patrick, who has ties to our area, Scranton, Pennsylvania, because he lived there with his dad, Jason Miller, and Lost Boys is just one of those 80s movies that has banging soundtrack, loads of gore, well done storyline, and a great twist ending that doesn't get talked about enough with how good the ending is. And also plays with all the tropes. But Fright Night as well. Fright Night plays with the tropes too. You have to have faith, the crushing the crucifix, which is what you're looking for. I want ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas. But Rich, what do you got going on? I'm sure you got a lot of con stuff coming on Film Buff Online this week. Where can you find your stuff, and where can you sort through all of this stuff?
Well, all of my writing is at filmbuffonline.com. Over the next day or two coming up, we'll have some more of my New York Comic-Con coverage. And you can also hear my other podcast, which is the Big Picture podcast that I do with my best friend, Natasha Bogutsky. Like I said at the top of the episode today, we dropped our most recent episode earlier this evening, and
I would say you're shaking it off. You're shaking off.
Yes, it's us talking about the Taylor Swift phenomenon and specifically talking about the movie, both as concert film, as cinema, as experience. We cover a lot of bases, so please check that out. You can find that by going to filmbuffonline.com and clicking on the link on the front page for the post of the story, or you can find all of that podcast by clicking on thebigpicturepod.com, which will take you to a listing of that. This coming week, starting Thursday, I will be at the Philadelphia Film Festival it runs about 10 days. I will be there on and off for about 4 or 5, depending on my schedule and how much I can get written in between days that I'm on site. So if you happen to be in the Philly area and you're at that festival, and you see me, do feel free to just
where's Waldo?
Say hello. By the time I am back here next Sunday for us to talk about Horror Express, you will appreciate this, man. I'll have seen American Fiction, Foe, The Holdovers, and Maestro. So
wow,
I'm getting
a
good run of
pre-Oscar contenders,
pre-Oscar stuff going already.
Oscar contenders. They could have been a contender.
It's that time of year, baby.
It's that time of year for gold. Okay,
yeah.
so
you can find me on socials at FilmBuffRich on Blue Sky and Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as well. JW the Movie Guy. I'm also on Blue Sky, JW the Movie Guy. You find me online on Facebook at JW the Movie Guy, and also Loud Nerdy, which is another podcast I do. That's tomorrow night. We'll be talking about all the pop culture stuff, including more Taylor Swift stuff. A couple of comments before we go. And you can find me anywhere, and where I'm here every Monday night with Rich. But you can also, you go to the Indie Escape Network, and you go to the Facebook page or the YouTube page. All of our shows are there, as well as all of the stuff we put up. We do put up different things. And the Loud Nerdy group is where you can definitely find me. I'm always there. I like different takes on classic horror movies. Priest is in the future. Priest is a good movie, solid. And then you need to do a vampire movie episode. I recently rewatched Vampirella,
yeah.
And why? I don't know why. And that is a perfect place to stop. But I do know why you'll be back next week to watch Horror Express with us. Check it out. It's a wild movie. We picked it because it's just so weird. And then we have the last one we do is going to be really weird as well. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stay safe. Watch a movie. I'm actually, when we get done in the next couple of weeks, I will let everybody know that I've watched one new horror film a day since the beginning of October. You know what? There's a couple I'm gonna recommend. I did Totally Killer. I really like that. I did House of Darkness, which is Neil LaBute, who did The Company of Men. House of Darkness, pretty funny. Absurd. Takes forever to get where it's going, as most Neil LaBute movies do, but it's a pretty fun take on vampire movies. And a new one I saw this week. I saw Dark Harvest, which is David Slade's new horror film, who did Hard Candy. So that's really fun. It's set in the 50s, and it's got like a main horror villain and stuff in a town that basically is eating itself, kind of thing, as most 50s horror film places do. But also I should let everybody know, if you're watching the show today, look for me on Friday afternoon. I will be going to see Killers of the Flower Moon. On Thursday, I will have a quick review up and running. On Friday at 5:30 is when we're doing it. So I hope to see everybody there for that. Tell you how good Martin Scorsese's new film is. Rich, you have a good time. Stay out of trouble. Have a great week. We'll see everybody next week for Horror Express. Bye.
Take care, folks.